Alright, let me check if I did this correctly. It's been a second again. I hope I'm doing it correctly. I feel bad I got pinged in the Discord and I didn't respond to it because I was busy you know, chilling out. So what's going on today? I haven't been live in a while, but I know that the music was pretty quiet last time, so I turned it up. So, yeah, what's up, Arya? So yeah, I mean, I just, because of this medication change that's gonna be changing soon, but probably gonna be like a week or so. It's I've just been having these crazy dreams and been sleeping like 10, 12 hours. So it's kind of like tiredness all the time where it's like I feel like I can kind of fall asleep at any moment. I had this dream last night that I was in this movie that was like there was this giant shark that was eating boats and people, like megalodon sized shark. Pretty horrifying, but I don't really know why my brain went there. I also had this other crazy dream where it was like an alternate version of my life where I was like selling drugs for this guy in college, and then he like sent someone to kill me because I wanted to stop. I tend to have like crazy vivid dreams sometimes. Anyway, kind of an aside about that, but I haven't really done any work on this. I've kind of been just busy doing other stuff. But so I guess I'm just gonna start off with where I ended up, which was kind of just sketching out all of the new rework for the map save and load. Like I did all of this stuff last time with how we are going to save it to binary, and I guess I'm just gonna look over all of this stuff and make sure that it's not gonna crash my computer when I run it. But yeah, let me also make sure that we're freeing this. Yeah, we do free this entities thing. And basically this entities thing that we're allocating, we're copying into it all of the entities at the time that we save. Then we sort it, that array. The reason why we want to sort it, if I remember this correctly, is because we want to sort it by asset ID so that we save all of the entities of one particular asset all together, so that we save space and save time when we unwrap it, right? Because we want to just save one asset header and then all of the entities underneath that, so that when we load, all we have to do is read the asset header, read the number of entities that are underneath that header, and then just iterate through and spawn in all of those entities. Anyway, so that's what that's basically doing. So we sort it, and then we write the amount of entities. That we iterate through. If the entity is real, okay. If current asset ID doesn't equal the ent instance ID. Okay, so something that I realized now that we have to immediately change is this current asset ID needs to start as -1 so that it's not a real asset ID, because if this ends up 0 equals 0, then we will never write a new asset ID. Or actually, yeah, it does matter because you always want this header on the first one. So if the current asset ID doesn't equal this entity's instance ID, then we change the current asset ID and then we write the asset header. And the asset header is the length of the name and then the asset name. And in this case, for simplicity's sake, the asset name is actually just the raw path to that asset. Then we find how many entities are under that asset ID here. We iterate through all of the entity count, and then we find the point where the instance ID changes, which is the asset ID, and then we change the current entity count to this, and then we break out. And then we write the current entity count so that we know how much we need to iterate. And then this is all the per entity data. And we're using Sterlen for all of this, and I'm hoping that that's fine. We're just going to assume that all of this is correct. It looks correct. We use vec3, vec4, vec3. That's fine. And then if we have an NPC component, we write the NPC component. What I'm also realizing now is that we have to write the NPC component thing. So obviously we also have to f-write that. So I forgot about that. So create NPC component. This should just be this. Yeah. So that's good. And we also have to, of course, remember to load that in. I don't know why this song is on the playlist. I hate it every time it comes up. I keep on saying to myself, I'm going to change the playlist. I'm going to fix it and remove certain songs, but then I always forget. There we go. So yeah, I forgot that. But yeah, that should be fine. Now, okay, so this NPC free slot figures out if the NPC component is real. We also need to make a check here if I mean, this feels a bit weird, but it is like correct to have this check here. If we need this, and unfortunately there isn't really a better way to write this other than just nesting it, which is kind of ugly, but it is kind of what it is. I don't really mind it. Yeah, I kind of have to warm up. I feel like when I don't do all this talking for a while, my kind of voice gets a bit shaky. It's something that I guess since I did it every day for so long, I just got kind of used to it. But it's kind of, I guess it's just something that you have to get used to. So let's just make sure that our NPC component is a real pointer. But we need to do this just as an extra check, just in case we segfault. So we do this pattern here where we store len the ID len before the ID, because we need to know how many characters we're reading in. And we do this for every single ID, for every single item, spell, attack, whatever. Eventually the idea is for all of these things to just be generic components, right? For just whatever stuff is inside of here, but I didn't do it like that. Yet. Okay. So the annoying thing here is that if one thing is off, then it's gonna like cause my computer to crash from, reading this from binary. So I kind of have to like make absolutely sure that we're doing this correctly. Thank you for the live streams. I'm learning to see myself. This is very helpful. Thanks. I hope that it's helpful. I don't really, consider myself an expert, but if you have any questions about how anything works, happy to answer any of that. So I'm just like going down the list of all of these just to make sure that all of them are correct. HP vitality, min max, strength, dexterity, speed, crit chance, crit damage. Now all of this information could be stuff that we just calculate when we read in, right, the geared stats specifically, but I think that for the purposes of this, it's fine just to save it, just to make sure that everything is working and our stride is correct for everything. All of this seems to be correct, right? We're reading in an ID len, and then we're specifying that we want to read in that amount of characters. I just have to make sure, so our item count and item capacity, and then we iterate the item count. And we get these items. And then the ID len is all the same here. Yeah, I think that all of this looks fine. I guess I'm just worried since the last time we had a bug with saving to binary, the stream like crashed like 3 times, like crashed my computer. But that was a much more complicated issue. That was basically we were writing out of bounds to a billion arrays that were like a static length of like 64, and our stride was off, and so the count that we were writing into it was some like insane like 2 million numbers. So it was like iterating over it for like 2 million, and so it was like really out of bounds. Anyway, that's why that bug happened. Okay, so all of this looks fine. Now the question is, how am I going to actually oh, actually, is this correct? Hold on. The asset length, then we find the path, frate asset name length, and the asset name length path. Then we write the current entity count here. Okay. And how do I check current entity index? Okay. We might have to do the same -1 trick here, I think, to match it, to make sure. So we brute force it by the first. We know that there's always going to be an asset first, so then that's what we read here. We also have to make sure that we're reading in the header. We do read in this header. Then we read the entity count. And then we malloc this. We also have to make sure that this isn't allocated already. So what I might actually do is just free that. Now, that what's actually annoying about this is that this load function is called from another function called map load. But that's something that we're gonna have to rework anyway. For now, I'm just going to make sure that we free it if it exists. And we're going to set it to null. Sorry if I'm typing a little bit slow today. It's been a while since I've typed, to be honest. Okay. You kind of want to do this. Okay. Oh, you need to do this obviously before you read this in. Okay. Okay, this is very clear and makes sense. Okay, so our current asset ID, okay, so this is incorrect. This is supposed to be 0 and this is supposed to be the -1 thing. So we load in the first asset name and then save the path and path. And then we read in the current entity count, which is the same order that this is in, right? And then we iterate over the entire count. And then if current entity index equals current entity count. Right, so this was kind of the workaround, was that we have this current entity count that's basically rolling in the background and we're increasing the index every time. And when we hit the end, then we know we need to load in the next asset. So then this is what gets run, which is exactly what happens up here. So this actually doesn't need to be -1, but it's whatever. Now I'm just wondering if this current entity index is fine to be 0. Is that... Yeah, it is supposed to start at 0 and then increment. Okay. This makes sense. Okay, so all of this looks correct. I haven't used this function otherwise, though, in a long time, so it may be possible that something else is off. This, this player thing we aren't really using, but hopefully everything else is correct. This tile thing isn't really necessary anymore. We were using it to save our map cells. Yeah, I did this whole thing with the map cells when we were still actually using map cells, but right now what is inside map cells actually doesn't even matter. All of this stuff isn't actually really in use anymore, other than the holes are actually quite important, right? The holes are actually quite important. How do I write them? I write the holes, right? And all of this, yeah, I had this whole thing drawn out. No, I don't write the holes. Really? Huh. I guess I calculate that when I read in. Oh my gosh. That's actually so annoying. Well, none of this stuff that I'm saving actually gets used, like this floor height, ceiling height. None of that actually... Maybe it does get used somewhere, and therefore I have to Anyway, it should be wherever I call this function is where we where I calculate this. So oh, I have caps lock on, that's why. At least I think I do. Why is this that was weird. So I'm just gonna go to where I call this. I free static geometry, I free the collision geometry, and then I re-init everything when I load. I don't remember why I re-init everything. Why don't I actually just like write the collision holes? I don't remember why I do that. I feel like that I should just save the collision holes and then read it in, because doing this whole reinitialization thing just seems so unnecessary. Once again, it's been a while since I looked at this, so maybe there was a good reason for it, but I feel like for game save wise, you should always be saving the exact state and not reinitializing all of the collision stuff. So yeah. Oh, I remember why. It was because what I did here was that I wanted to simplify things, so I basically made map cells all have the same exact size. And so therefore I can't write an undetermined amount of holes per map cell. Which is completely incorrect, and totally unnecessary. So I can actually get rid of this and instead just write the map cells and have them have varying sizes. I think the reason why was something about, I don't really know. Map width times map height. Okay, so I think I'm just going to do this. Okay. Okay, so the write map cell and the read map cell is what I have to change now. And the write was completely oversimplified here, right? Yeah, I had this. Which was kind of just like a very stupid way of doing things. Instead, now with the hindsight that I now have of wanting to do this, obviously I can put in the cell hole count and hole capacity to make sure we get exactly the same stuff, and then just iterate over the hole count. How do I think that's why, is because all of this was super annoying to... What is resizable hole link? Is this... Oh... Yeah. That's why this is annoying. Okay, so this is gonna become a very long function because we have a bunch of arrays in here with undetermined length. Of course, the outline and the neighbors. The hole link is God, God, it's been a while since I looked at this. Trying to remember whole ID in cell. I think that the cell obviously is the cell that it's in, and the whole ID is the number inside of the cell. So let's say you have neighbors to a hole. This is for nav meshing, right? You have neighbors to a hole that are in other cells, right? And so you need to know what cell those are in and which ID index inside of those cells that hole is. So that's what that is. Obviously, we have to write that in a more complicated way, though, than, would be simple. Okay, so obviously we're going to be writing the whole data. So that's what all of this is. So we're going to write the whole count and then iterate over that. And then those are just vec2s, so we are going to write those like this. Yeah, I can just do it like this, right? I think, right? Then what we want to do is write all of that other information. It's kind of annoying, but we do have to do it. This is stuff that's actually necessary, since all of this stuff is actually still in use in the engine. It isn't something that we can just say is irrelevant. All of this stuff is collision data that needs to be preserved. I'm sure that there's probably a clever way of doing this that doesn't involve copying and pasting all of the members down, but it is important for us to keep it separate in my mind, since all of this stuff is different, because we have to, of course, do this manually. So we can't just f-write the whole, because the size of the whole is... Actually, we could probably just write the whole entirely, but whatever. This is kind of in line with everything else that we've written so far, so I'm just going to do this instead. But yeah, you could probably just write the whole and then ignore the pointer to the outline. That's probably entirely something that you could do. Okay. Now we want to f-write we want to get the we can get the resizable. Yeah, it's been a while since I typed, so I'm really Okay. So if link buffer and link count is greater than 0, then we will write that data, right? Of course we want to f-write the count and the capacity. That's kind of like okay, so we want to iterate it in this case. And then we want to write all of the whole links. Okay. None of this is very thrilling watching this, so I apologize if it isn't very thrilling. But it does have to get done, so someone has to do it. Okay. So that's how we're doing that. We can get rid of this, I guess. So that should be it for that. Of course, this isn't just it, because we also have these vertical holes, which are they are a separate thing for a very important reason that I can't really explain because I can't remember. All I remember is that it's a very important reason, so you're gonna just have to trust me. Basically, our vertical holes are different from our other non-vertical holes because of how we deal with collision. Because I have like this wall running mechanic, right? So for that to work, I need completely vertical walls to store separate information. Which, yeah, it's a whole thing. Haven't touched it in a long time, so explaining it is kind of difficult. It is kind of cold out, which is why you kind of may hear this clicking in the background. That's actually my space heater. That's that is going on. Of course, you would just love for all of this to just be finished when we finish writing all of this, but then the real pain kicks in, which is the fact that that we of course have to mirror it with f reads and allocation on the other end. So certainly is not going to be over anytime soon. I wonder if I can just write the whole thing. Maybe it's a bit ambitious. I don't really know how that works. If I can, I probably can, right? Is that allowed? I almost don't want to test it. It's just probably safer to just do this. I was considering rewriting my chess engine and maybe taking a break from doing this engine stuff. I don't know if that's anything anybody would be interested in, but I think that might be fun. Because, to be honest, I feel like I had so much potential with that chess engine, but it just wasn't reached because my kind of understanding of coding when I was getting back into it was just kind of limited, you know? Like, I really made things super inefficient. Like, every piece in terms of generating mood was just basically a huge switch case that went to its specified, routines to generate moves, I'm Frumpy, just changed my name. Also, chess engine? Yes, I love chess. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that because I feel like probably most people would just, are just here for the, most people are just like really into game engines, but yeah, I definitely could have made it a lot better. Like, it basically, the structure of it was that for every piece, it was a switch case that basically handled what type of piece it was, and then you would generate all of the moves, and then you have that recursive negamax that, checks out all of the possibilities. Just because of the structure of it, it turned out to be pretty slow. Because I didn't really realize, I think, the consequences of having all of these if statements, especially when I'm scoring moves and things like that. Like these, obviously so they have this thing called a perft, which is basically just the test that shows how you generate moves and how fast you can generate all of the moves for any position, right? Basically the recursive thing that you go like recursively to like 5 moves and like check, there's a billion moves or whatever, and how fast your engine can generate all of those moves. And my perf test was like, super good. Where my engine kind of failed was not in the validating of moves, but finding good moves and getting rid of bad moves. It was very very expensive routine that I could have definitely streamlined later, but I didn't really know how to do it at the time. But probably with what I know now, I could probably make it a lot better. But I kind of also remember what I hated about making the chess engine at the end was basically like the end of your chess engine journey is doing something called you're basically, I forgot what the name of it is, but you're basically doing tests every time you make a change. You have the engine play itself to determine the win rate, and you have to basically run it like 1,000 times to determine if a change you made is good or if it's bad. And you have to run that basically for every change that you make with scoring and all of that stuff, right? And some people really enjoy that, right? Is like this, the incremental changes that you get and stuff, but I really, really disliked it. Like, I hated just like every time I change a line of code, just having to wait like 3 hours to determine if the change was positive or not. And that was something that I really hated about it. There's kind of no way around that though, because there's, if you change a bunch of things and then test it, then you're never gonna know which thing is wrong, right? So also there was a bug inside of it that basically inside of it there was a also what I just realized is that this stuff doesn't have any outline or neighbors, so it's actually super easy to write this struct, obviously, so I'm pretty happy about that. Anyway, what I was saying was that it basically had this thing inside of it that was, what was it? Oh yeah, there are these hashes. Forgot what it's called, but there's this there are these hashes where you basically hash. Oh, it's Zobrist hashing, right? Where every time you during a game find a new unique position, you hash that position so that you never have to evaluate it again. But there was a bug within my hashing algorithm that sometimes a position would register as another position. Now you'd think that that's like super, you could solve that issue, but like my hashing routine and stuff was so complicated that I would sit there for like hours and hours, and I eventually ironed out so many bugs. But there was just one combination of moves that it would break it, right? And once you have that broken, then you're basically, your evaluating is completely wrong, right? Because now you're basically, one position might be evaluated as a different position way down the line, and then it basically throws the whole thing off. Because so my engine would randomly blunder pieces, like maybe 1 out of 5 games or whatever, it would just blunder its queen, so that was super frustrating, right? But at a high level, it's something that's necessary inside of a chess engine to have Zobrist hashing. But yeah, probably would do things a lot cleaner and make it debuggable this time, if I was to do it again. Anyway, long ramble, but I don't really go live to just code. I go live to ramble about things, so hey, what's up, y'all? I'm alright. Just busy and tired, so but I'm alright. It's coming back to doing this stuff after a while is kind of, my fingers are the memory for my fingers and typing all of this is off. But otherwise I'm fine. The engine has definitely been neglected though. Not gonna lie. So, okay, so these tries are basically the triangles. There's a global array of collision surfaces that are separately from these holes that that need to be saved. So every cell basically has all of the indices for all of the triangles that are inside of it. And that's why we rebuild that on map load. However, we're not going to be doing that anymore, and we're instead going to be saving it like I discussed previously. So that's our right map cell. Now our read map cell is obviously going to have to change to match this. Obviously what I was doing before was I was just nulling it out. However, we're just gonna have to do this way. I got back to learn C++ 17. I've seen my knowledge is very limited. Why do you say that? I don't know C++ 17 myself. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to actually go back. I want to go here and I want to select all of the F writes. And then we want to change it to F reads, obviously. And then we want to go into all of this and add mallocs, right? So for cell holes, we want to malloc this too. Obviously, we also need to go if cell hole count and cell hole capacity, right? So if we have a hole count and a hole capacity, otherwise we will just null it out, right? Because there is no holes inside of the cell. And that's the pattern we're going to use. Found hard times in understanding Vulkan code. I probably would have hard times understanding Vulkan code myself. I completely get it. It's apparently pretty confusing. Excuse me. Okay. So this is the pattern we're going to use for all of this. I'm going to build a game engine and a game, also switch to Linux for development. Hey, welcome to Linux. I really do enjoy Linux, but there are a lot of things about it that I don't like, you know. I've been really missing out on specifically some of the some of the tools that are available on Windows, like Adobe stuff and Ableton, you know. But I think in terms of development tools, it's really nice, right? You can install packages like super easily, and so for that, it's pretty nice. Okay, so that's that. Otherwise, I did watch the rest of Worlds live. I saw the finals live and the opening ceremony and all that stuff live because I was super hyped for it. I was really hoping for KT to win, but I mean, either way, it's pretty awesome. Anyway, Just thought to mention that it is something that I just watch every year. If anybody is into League, Pro League, I'm into it just because it's like my teenage years when League first like came out. My friends in high school and I used to play it. Okay. You know what I just realized I should be doing is like the correct thing is I should only be checking the capacity because that's the only thing that is going to determine our malloc. Our count actually doesn't matter technically, right? Windows takes 7-10 megabytes of RAM, gigabytes of RAM for doing nothing. Yeah, very true. Very true. Unless, you know, in my case, you have, well, not in my case anymore, but you end up with all of these, you know, compositors and blah, blah, blah. Then you end up with exactly the same thing as Windows. With my fresh installation, I had like, you know, 2 gigabytes of RAM for sure, but then definitely shot back up to like 5 and 6 once I messed around with it. Okay. So, hopefully that works. I kind of did like space out because I was talking while I was doing all of this. Hopefully I did it correctly, because if one thing is off, then it's all gonna be off, right? Oh yeah, for the whole link we have to do the same thing, and for the outline we have to do the same thing. We have to malloc if whole outline count, then we need to malloc to that outline count. This isn't a resizable array, so there's no capacity thing. Okay, so the same thing for the length. For the length. At first I was lost in Linux in a day, set up everything. Yeah. Yeah, as long as you have like some, you know, the internet and all that, it's pretty easy to find. It's the same thing for like NeoVim and Vim and Emacs. You know, there's so many tutorials and all that stuff that it's kind of just like, you know, it's not that that difficult to figure it out. So what we're gonna do instead of this is, obviously we're going to do if link capacity. If we have a capacity that's greater than 0, then we want to obviously link buffer equals malloc Size of whole link. I don't know how long I'm going to be alive today. I did kind of drink an extra cup of coffee just to make sure I was good. So that is that. Okay. I think all of this is good. Sorry, I'm just like checking everything side by side, so that's why I'm a bit quiet. Just making sure. We do malloc the vertical holes, yep. Malloc the tri-indices. Okay, so that's all of that dealt with. Obviously, we do also need a save. We do need a save other than just the map cells. We also need to save the collision geometry. All of the collision triangles. Yeah. Because we want that to transfer over, of course. Yeah. How do I want to do this? Let's just make sure that we do take in the collision geometry into here. We had this. Oh. Interesting. Okay. Okay. So, we actually can't save the collision triangles because when we load in, we are loading in the assets, which naturally loads in the collision triangles with those assets. Legendary YouTube algo pull? Thanks. I appreciate that. Let me know if you have any questions about anything. I have a bunch of, streams videos where you can see what the engine looks like. Right now, what I'm kind of trying to think about, basically we have all of our collision geometry as raw triangles and vertices and all of that. However, when we load in our assets, we create those triangles. So here basically what this would look like is we f-read the asset name and the path and whatever, and then we what we're gonna have here is we will, this is what it will be, this load gltf emit tries, and of course this emit triangles means that we are going to emit collision stuff for all of this. And I probably want that to be a thing. However, that breaks all of the tri indices inside of map cells that I just serialized. So that's a bit difficult. What we could do is we could just what we probably should do, right, is, since we are going to emit new triangles and the indices are going to be wrong, we should just like not write the indices and create new indices when we load in our assets. And so we'll just leave this as null, and make all of this stuff 0. And this is going to have the effect of, so that our collision surfaces, like our vertical holes and our, slope surfaces and all of this stuff, that's going to be saved because that's stuff that we don't have to recalculate again. But as for the indices inside of the massive collision geometry array, all of those links need to be rebuilt since we are reloading in all of those assets during runtime, right? So I'm not going to write that anymore. Okay, so all right. So we are reading and writing our map cells, and so we don't actually have to, what I had before is, capacity is a lie, I tell you. I have no clue what this comment was about. But anyway, what this used to be was that we saved our collision geometry and then read it in. But now we're going to re-emit all of that stuff. So we want to be taking in our static geometry as well. Okay. Yeah. When we load in, and the reason why is because it requires this function, obviously, and we want our light map data too, because what that function does is it also recalculates the light map for if we need to calculate the light map on load in for certain assets. Boat trip balls on Benadryl and wrote a comment. I don't know what that's talking about. Are you talking about me? Did I? Anyway, maybe I did. I do take Benadryl sometimes to sleep because I have insomnia issues. Anyway, upload binary. So we need to change this function signature. I don't really remember writing a comment, but anyway, so this load gltf emit tries is now going to be a thing, and I think it's fine. We also want to do this during the iteration loop, of course, with every new path that we find, and then when we I wonder, so I think spawning all of these entities in is just gonna work like this. I don't think that we have to. Let me take a look at where we load gltf emit tries. Find and spawn new asset instance. So this is what spawns entities in our like hard-coded thing, right? That we haven't really done the editor side of this, right? Where we just like have an asset and we spawn it in. This is just like hard-coded for now. Capacity is a lie, type of shit you say in a Benadryl trip? No, definitely not. It was I think it was just me being funny because we I had an array that I was writing, but the capacity for that array was like incorrect and it was causing me to crash. I have a lot of comments like that inside of here. I have a specifically funny comment, I think, with just like, it's like 2 paragraphs, like talking myself out of like overcomplicating something. I was like a note to self for me later. The reason why this is simple is because complicating it is fucking stupid, and it's going to take hours of your life away, hours that you could spend doing other things like watching the birds outside or something like that. I just like doing that stuff. Anyway, so this find and spawn new asset instance, we need to make sure that all of this NPC stuff, all of this NPC stuff is handling exactly this find and spawn new asset instance. And what this does is it takes a path and it finds that asset within memory, and it spawns it in at certain coordinates with certain flags. And this is how we spawn them in. But I need to make sure, of course, that we are doing exactly what this function does. Oh, this is in render. Find and spawn new asset instance. It spawn new asset instance, right? So here we're still doing this disgusting realic thing. This is gonna be changed later. So we do look up the hitboxes and then do the hitboxes, which is something that we don't do here. However, the hitboxes don't really matter because we aren't using them anymore. So I could just like literally just null out the hitboxes on the new entity that we get. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just going to set ent hitbox capacity equals ent hitbox count equals 0. And then we're going to null out the hitboxes equals null. Okay. We set the rotation, the position. Basically, we have these overrides that if we supply it to the function, then we need to change that from the default. The reason why is we have, assets at different positions, and also assets that just have a default position. So for like map geometry assets, you obviously just want to keep them at a default position and rotation. But for things like, player models and stuff like that, you're going to want to have different locations and rotations and all of that. So, okay. And then what we do here is we have the asset nodes, and then we copy over the nodes, right? Load GLTF emit tries saves all of that information, but we do actually need to do that for all of the entity nodes. Reason being is because we need that information for animations, right? Is you need the nodes and the bones and all that stuff to know what you're moving. Let me check this error. Too few arguments of function call. Oh yeah, so we're gonna change that in a little bit, but okay, so we do need to copy this over specifically. All of this code that copies over. Basically what this does is it copies the asset data into the entity so that every entity has its own instance of the asset data for whatever. A way to streamline this in the future would just be to have this as a component and then have all of this stuff pre-allocated, and to have like a maximum amount of joins instead of mallocing this. However, we only are mallocing this at load time, so right now I'm not really worried about it. Okay, so we should make this its own function, right? So that's what I'm gonna do. We can return void, and this is going to be copy asset gltf into entity, and this is going to take in a gltf instance, which is the asset, and a entity pointer ent. And this is just literally going to be all of this data, all of this function stuff. We're just going to put it in here so that we can reuse the code. And it should be exactly that. Asset and okay. So we obviously want to put this function. I want to make sure that this is fine for us to do. I think that it is. I want to put this function obviously into the header file, and then we will use that inside of here. We are going to use copy asset gltf into entity. And this is going to take in the current asset. I need to get the current asset, and I need to remember, to get that, I need to remember if load gltf emit tries. Does this return the asset that we load into? Does it? Does it indeed? No, it doesn't. Okay. Maybe I want it to. I'm not really sure. I guess what I could do is I could just find assets. Why is this not a thing? This is definitely a function. I guess it's not in this header file. So this is a function that just finds a asset that we have loaded in. So find asset with the path. This should, oh right. This is a gltf instance. Okay. So very important, I guess, is to make sure we have this thing here. If asset, then we copy asset gltf into entity. Just to make sure we are doing this correctly. Else we want to null out all of that node data, etc. We also want to make sure that our asset equals the find asset every time we load in a new asset. So we will set it to the path. Okay. Okie dokie, okie dokie, okie dokie. So if we want to null out all of those fields, we want to go to where this function is and where we put this out, and we want to go through all of this and figure out what we're doing. So int nodes equals null, int node count equals 0. And we want to do this for all of the other skins, etc. I guess that is just that, actually. Okay. Okie dokie, okie dokie. Alright, this seems to be exactly what we are supposed to be doing. I have no clue if this is going to work. No clue if this is going to work, but we have to give it a shot. So I want to obviously go to load map, and of course we are going to be now passing into load map binary our static geometry and our light map data. Now so this init static geometry actually does need to still happen since we are reloading the asset in. You're the 800th sub? Thanks. Thanks for the sub. That's awesome. 800, wow. I remember, the day we hit 300. That was huge. Yeah. Am I splitting the editor and game part for my game? Currently making my own engine. Not really. I have basically it's separated by mode. If you are in editor mode, then you basically go through a different loop than if you're in gameplay mode. So if you're in editor mode, you not only go through a different input loop, but you also go through obviously different menus. You go through different rendering. The rendering passes are different for editor mode. If I remember correctly, it is. Maybe. Also, I'm new to your channel, so I'm sorry for asking, but am I making a 3D or 2D? I'm making a 3D engine. I can show off what it looks like, just for you to see it. What am I doing? I still named the binaries Raycaster as kind of a joke, I guess, since I started off with just a Raycaster and now it's become this. This is what it looks like. So obviously all these different visual settings and stuff. This is something that we did the last time, was adding these kind of stencil buffer outlines to all of the enemies and stuff. Um, but yeah. Anyway. Right now what I'm working on is the saving and loading for stuff. Because I don't have it right now so that I can basically save assets at certain locations. And so that's what we're trying to figure out how to do right now. But yeah, it's been a while since basically this init is just our hard-coded initialization. And so I need to make sure that when we load our game, then we are reinitializing all the things that need to be reinitializing, and then just saving all the things that don't need to be changed. Like, yeah. It's kind of complicated, I guess. The last time I saw there was a character that was getting some height during coding. Yeah, that was probably the stencil buffer outlines weren't being sized correctly. The graphics kind of remind me of Valve's Gold Source engine. Yeah, the engine is heavily inspired by Source engine. I even like the movement code is very similar because I kind of looked at it for reference for all of that stuff. I definitely need to vibe code UI and React. I have my own UI system. Do I have hot reloading implemented? Yeah, I can show you that. That was kind of, recent. I just kind of didn't do it out of laziness. It's very simple to do it, especially if you have kind of the pipeline already set up. Basically, I just have callback hooks for every shader that you can set up a function that that reinitializes a shader, and a shader's uniforms and all of that stuff. So basically I just delete the shader and rerun that function from the callback when I want to reload, right? And I can show that off by the entity mesh frag shader. If I can show, I just do this, right? And reload it, right? And it'll change the entity color to something you'll see in a sec. For entity mesh reload, right? And so that's that change that we just made. Maybe it'll be easier to see if we change the outline color. Right, and then it changes it to yellow. So it's very simple to implement that. If you have the pipeline already, like I was just really lazy about doing it. But to show where the code for that is, just so that you know what it looks like, reload shader. So we have the function, right? This callback function that we stored, that we set here. We just say, oh yeah, we want to keep this callback function, and then we store the vertex path and the fragment shader path. And then we call the cleanup function, which is a callback function that frees and nulls out a certain shader. And then we use the callback function that sets it up with that vertex path and fragment shader path. Of course, it's something that you can also do for compute shaders as well, if you're into that. I've worked with Source for a while, level designing and modding, and honestly, out of all the engines that I've worked, Source was the simplest to understand because all your tools were a separate program. Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of my time as like a teenager bee hopping, and so I obviously, I would download maps off of like Game Banana, and so the fact like Hammer Editor and all that stuff is really kind of very important to me in terms of like editing and changing things around. I always wanted to be as flexible as that editor is. Hi, why did I switch from Legacy GL to Modern? I'm not completely modern. I use SSBOs because it's greatly... It actually has made my engine faster using SSBOs for certain things. But I don't use compute shaders all the time. Mainly because I try to stay as compatible with older hardware, because I know older GPUs like mine struggle with that stuff. What's its name? I don't have a name for it. I don't really know what it should be named. Is it open source? No. I don't know if I'm gonna make it open source. Everybody asked me if I should make it open source. I don't really know. I guess it's just a bit of like maybe insecurity having all my code out there to see. But yeah. Maybe it isn't a big deal, but yeah. Anyway, so load map, we have to actually like figure out, I feel like, what this function is doing, if it's freeing our map or what. So we have this free map function, and we have to go through and figure out what exactly this is doing. So it frees the map cells, nulls out all of that stuff. Okay, so it appears that it's doing all of that. What's my operating system? I'm on Linux Mint. I don't use a lot of custom stuff inside of my operating system, just because I kind of just use it for coding anyway. Like, I don't really need any fancy animations or anything. But all that stuff looks really cool. It just probably slow my computer down, I think. Honestly, I'd love for game engines to stop combining multiple tools into one. Should go back to how Source and Amnesia's game engine worked, where you could have several tools like level editor. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the way my engine works right now is just very simply, you just have a button that switches you into editor mode. But I don't really know what the level editor is going to look like when it ends up. Right now, it's kind of difficult because I've kind of made everything into assets now that you can load straight in from Blender. And so if I was to make a proper level editor that isn't just asset based now, I would have to basically code a GLTF exporter, which is not easy to do. So Yeah, right now it's kind of just stuck in Blender. But the way it used to work was I had like literally you could edit every single triangle's points themselves and draw triangles and stuff like that. And I kind of miss that about the engine, but to get like animations and stuff working, I had to kind of make everything an asset. What's my window library? SDL2. Better for you, it would waste a lot of time writing. Yeah. Is C sharp valid to learn? Um, I think C sharp is definitely. I mean, any language is valid to learn. I mean, it depends what you're working on, for sure. Like, if you want to make a game engine, you definitely want to use a non-garbage collected language. Um, if you're really, into C sharp or Java, I don't see why you shouldn't, right? But if you want to make something good, then you should definitely use a language that you're dealing with memory allocation yourself, like C, C++, you know. Um, so Linux is a safe option, safe bet. Used to be an Arch, but after, yeah, I heard about all of the stuff. So my maps are made on Blender. How do I manage light sources? All of the light sources and stuff, it's kind of an old system that I need to rework, but basically an entity can just be marked as a light, and then light map wise, if it's marked to light map it as static, then I just basically emit light from it in rays, voxel based, to every surface, and then I accumulate it in a UV light map. So that's how I manage light sources. How do I display the weapon? Is it an existing lib? No, it's my own custom. I mean, I display the weapon just like every other entity model. And the asset is that I just loaded in all the triangles into a VBO, and draw it to the screen. But obviously its position is, I have a separate camera that I set up that draws it, and it just draws the model on top of the screen, right? So I have a function that sets up a camera, and so I just set up a camera behind the weapon, and then I have a certain draw call that I have set up for it. I can show what the code for that looks like if you're interested in it. Basically, I can show you it from initialization to what happens is I have these are basically draw commands for all of the different draw calls that we do. And I have one for the weapon, which the weapon has two materials right now, wood for the handle and metal for the rest of it. You could have that on just one texture, but I have it as separate. And I have these properties that when I execute the draw command, it basically just draws it on top of the pre-existing main frame buffer, just with an alpha channel, so it draws it over it, right? And yeah, that's how I draw it. And then obviously the animation that it plays is just, it's complicated. It's the skeletal animation from Blender. What do I use for the UI? IMGUI Nuclear. I use Nuclear for the editor thing, but I have my own UI library for actual UI that you would make with the engine, right? But for the editor it's Nuclear. Honestly, I use Nuclear because it's simpler to set up Nuclear for C than IMGUI. If you use IMGUI, you have to compile with G++, and it's gonna give you a bunch of errors and stuff that you gotta deal with. So I just prefer compiling with GCC, so it was kind of frustrating to set up OmGUI. I don't know how people do it, but apparently they do it with C. Um, but I don't know. There's apparently a thing called C OmGUI, but if you're making it in C++, then of course that's going to change. What's my opinion on Rust? I used Rust for a while. It was kind of like my first real low-level language, right? But it kind of feels like you're fighting it a lot, you know. How was it, Rust? Kind of feels like you're fighting the compiler errors all the time, you know. I think it's probably good if you're working like within like a company or, you know, something like that with a team with a lot of people. Like it probably makes things like commercial based applications a lot safer and stuff. But for a hobby project, I just would never find Rust very fun to write, you know? It's much more fun to write C, at least in my opinion. So if I understand well, you make my app maps in Blender and export them in GLTF. Yeah, I mean, I used to basically make the maps in my own level editor, but then I realized if I wanted to generalize assets and have all these animations and stuff, I had to just cave in and make everything in Blender. But yeah, so I parse GLTFs painfully on my own. There's documentation on that is already in the Discord, but I don't know if it's all in the Discord. There are kind of like 3 websites that I use to kind of figure out the GLTF file format. GLTF is actually 2 things. It's a binary file and a JSON that you have to parse in tandem. Now if you aren't like animating things skeletal, you know, you can just use a .object file, but for getting like scene nodes and skins and all that stuff, joints, etc., you have to have GLTF. So it's much more complicated than .object because .object is just basically a JSON at the end of the day with different tokens that you're reading in, but when it's GLTF, you're basically reading in a bunch of data accessors, which are basically types of, you know, floats and integers, whatever, and then you're reading in that stuff from the binary file into variables, which then I emit my triangles from that. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot to set up at first. Like I set up my .object importing way before I did my GLTF stuff, because the GLTF stuff was super daunting to do. Try to use Rust. There's also, by the way, a libraries for parsing GLTF, like I think it's called Tiny GLTF maybe. The reason why I didn't use a library is because eventually I'm going to need to serialize to GLTF, so I'm going to have to write it at some point anyway, you know. I tried to use Rust and I felt like I was about to get a stroke. Yeah, I mean it is. I think that Rust is really cool, but I don't know. I just don't find it very fun at the end of the day. It's kind of like, it's like kind of having a boss kind of over your shoulder all the time telling you what you can and can't do. Right now I'm using Blender for my level editor, so GLTF, right? And are the lights empty objects or entities? Yeah. I mean, you could have them as empty assets for sure. Right now, I just kind of have them as their own toggle, right? If an asset is a light, then I just have this flag that makes it, that turns the brightness up and the color or whatever. But yeah, I haven't really worked on the lighting in a long time because I've been working on other stuff, but that's how it works, yeah. I guess I haven't really made a way that you can create an empty entity, but I suppose it would be fairly easy to do within the engine. We'll compare Rust to C++ all the time. Well, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's, most comparable to C++, I guess, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess everybody will have their own opinion about things, but yeah. Anyway, I've been yapping a lot, so yeah, I don't really know how any of this works, to be honest, and I'm pretty fried trying to figure it out. So when we're loading a map, I need to figure out thanks, really good work and advice for your own editor. Thanks. I hope that it's helpful. I'm not really an expert on anything, but I hope it's helpful. So this initializes a new light map for it, which I think is fine for now. My opinion, C++ is better. That's why it's been around for more than 4 decades. I mean, I don't think old necessarily means better, There's, of course, always room for change, There are, of course, like, really great, things that Rust does. I just think that it's pretty inflexible, I'm new. Can I briefly describe what I'm making right now? I'm making the save and load function for saving and loading a game state. Basically what it is it's just saving assets, right? Everything is an asset that basically we save an asset header and then all of the entity instances that exist with that asset underneath it, and all of that data, right? And then we order it by asset, and then when we load it in, we replicate the original order. What the kind of annoying thing now that I have to kind of do is I have to, excuse my language, but unfuck the complicated initialization routine for my engine and figure out how much of that stuff I need to replicate on load. Since I haven't touched this load map function in a very long time, I have to kind of make sure all this init static geometry buffers and stuff is actually necessary and we're not leaking memory anywhere. Because we probably are leaking memory on load, to be completely honest. In fact, we are right here, for instance. This is a thing, right? GL delete texture. GL delete textures. So So we want to delete all of our old light map textures, I think. What's kind of confusing is that I have this compute lighting 3D and compute skylight that I'm pretty sure is what's being put into these, right? So I don't know why this happens after this. So really all of this deleting these textures and regenerating them should actually happen before we initialize a new light map. How long have I been making this project? Months. You can see when my first video on it was. I kind of had this promise that I made to myself that I wasn't going to cut my beard until I finished the engine, and now my beard is very, very long. To the point where I don't know if I can keep the promise anymore. But yeah, it's very, very long. What is my opinion on AI making games? My opinion is that, it's becoming more and more. I've become very, very anti-AI. I don't really care about environmental costs or any of this bullshit. I am becoming more and more anti-AI once I see more of this AI content. I think the impact of AI culturally on society is a very negative thing. I think it's just a very, very negative thing. I think it's the same thing that I have with social media, with it's just not, it's not good. Is just what I have to say about it. It's not good. And it's, yeah, I don't really care about, I do care about the environment or whatever, but I'm not going to sit here and talk about that because there's, cars, for example, but the more and more these AI Sora videos come out, these I get ads on YouTube all the time that are just AI generated videos with an AI generated voice. It's just lies, it's all lies, Why not make textures a reusable struct with a few free functions to create and manage them? That's a good point. But I have that for all of my textures that aren't light map textures. But for example, I have these functions that automatically get run when I load a texture in from a file, that we can see them here. Load texture, right? It gets loaded in with certain parameters. This gets run by a texture registry that parses in texture arrays into texture array groups. We create static array groups with assorted by all the params, so unique params get put into different texture arrays. This is how our batching works, right? But just for our 3 light map textures, which are we have 2 3D voxel light map textures and one 2D UV light map, it's just very simple to just free it and initialize it hard-coded, I think. To be fair, each language has its own usage, pros and cons. For example, you could make Python script to scratch to see how it would work. Yeah. what triggers me is when people say AI wastes water. Yeah, I don't really know the whole thing about it. I hear that, but I don't really know the whole thing about it. My whole thing is that regardless of the environmental impact, it, just like crypto, just like the whole of social media is and will always be an awful thing for society. If you were to talk to a generative AI engineer, what would I say to them? I mean, engineer is really, a stretch, but I mean, I wouldn't really say anything to them. I don't really, I don't go on the internet or, argue with people. I'm not that type of person. But, I mean, yeah, I also see all these job listings for, like, that you have to be okay with using AI assistants, that our company uses and agents and, like, it's absurd to me. It's absurd to me that I have to be okay with, and I also get ads for this on YouTube. Oh, this agent, Claude Code, can see all of my code base. Why would I want Claude Code to see all of my code base? Like, what? Is this Capuchin? It's my own theme, actually. You can use exclamation point theme to get it. Do I have any experience with website making? What should I use? I have a domain. I'm not really... I've never been personally into making websites. I hear a lot of people use React and stuff. But yeah, I don't really know anything about that. Don't really know anything about that. Anyway, so this load lightmap texture atlas is actually like renamed wrong. Basically what this does, if I remember correctly, is it initializes a texture atlas so that the lightmap atlas, before we fill it with data, recompute the lightmap. And if I'm correct about this, hold on. Let me just make sure. So this load lightmap texture atlas, this does delete the textures already. This does. Okay, interesting. So if it frees those, then during compute lighting 3D, maybe. Where do I actually fill the lightmap textures with data? I don't know what this comment was about. That's a very old comment. Don't I fill it with data here? Blur RGB A lightmap. Huh. Actually, maybe not. Maybe... Oh. Okay, so we don't actually need to delete those textures. This is already correct. We fill it with data here. That's this voxel buffer. I forgot about this. Yeah, so this is getting filled with data here. That's what it's setting this texture to. And this load lightmap texture atlas, I should write a note here just so that I don't get confused here again. This function deletes old lightmap textures. Okay. Holy, I have 28 viewers. That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't streamed in a long time, so it's really been cool to have a bunch of people in here talking. I haven't really been getting any work done because of it, but I don't really go live to work. Okay, so init load init. This seems to be correct. Reset texture pool, load texture registry. This loads in the default, which we haven't changed yet. We need to actually probably... A texture registry was going to be per map data. I just never made it made it a part of the struct and then wrote it to binary. So I guess we can do that right now. I kind of want to make sure that the rest of this works. Init text arrays, build draw buffers. I feel like I'm missing something. Let's go back to try to compare this with our init function. I don't think that we need to re-init our frame buffers or anything like that, hopefully. Okay. The interesting thing is this spawn weapon cam, actually. So this is going to have to eventually be... Also this init UI. This is all kind of hard-coded initialization stuff. That we don't have to worry about right now, but I wonder on game load if we want to redo this. I wonder if we're going to be leaking memory if we write that in. But yeah. How do I make the models? I make them in Blender. I used to have like an in-house map editor, like a 3D kind of per triangle map editor, but for animation, like once I made my first enemy, I like realized, oh, I want skeletal animations, and so I kind of switched to Blender for everything, just because making that system is a bit complicated, you know. Yeah, so this init collision holes, we also need to build hole adjacency. What this does is it configures the nav mesh for a map. Then this build draw buffers. I feel like this happens before all of this stuff. Load texture registry, load entity definitions, init text arrays. Yeah, so this needs to happen before we initialize the map. Reset text arrays, is this deletes the textures? Yeah. I'm just not gonna really concern myself with all of that since I haven't touched that in a long time. I'm just gonna assume that that works. I wonder how much of this is gonna break once I try this out, but we're not gonna know until we try it, right? Init render callbacks and init UI callbacks. Yeah, we need to make stuff that frees all of our and like reinitializes all of our materials and frame buffer data, but I'm not gonna write that right now because that's gonna be complicated. Initialize OpenGL buffer data. This isn't free stuff, does it? GL buffer data. It calls GL buffer data for all of the bindings. I feel like this is actually, we can call this. This basically sets up VBOs to their first kind of state with all of the current models based on our draw buffers. And we need to redo that if we're reloading in assets. Me and my 9 friends want to know if you would consider being an LLM trainer. Interesting. Probably not, but I mean, if that's a job offer, then sure. You know, I guess I dream of having some job programming. Um, but obviously being kind of staunch anti AI as I am, it's like kind of, you know, how long have I been coding in C? Probably just over a year. I started programming when I was 16, and now I'm 24. And I started in Java. But I haven't been coding all the time, just kind of off and on. Anyway, I wonder if we compile. I haven't compiled in a while, but I kind of just want to see what's going on. Apparently we are programming. We are programming. We are compiling. Apparently we are compiling. Okay. So. Okay. We are here. Okay. F8. F9. Or was it F... Yes, F10 does it. Okay, we are reloading everything in. And we get a seg fault on memcopy. Okay. Let's see. Handle player input. And load map binary. Read map cell. Okay. It's in an fread memcopy. Interesting. Okay. So let's go to where that is. We may have to like change our compile flags and figure all that stuff out, but I did assume that we would run into some issues. Okay. Let's go to write map cell. That's wrong file. Okay. So something here is giving us problems. First of all, let's make sure that the alignment is correct leading up to it, right? So let's make sure that we f-write this tile, right? And we f-read this chunk ID, right? We malloc the map cells. I want to make sure that all of this is correct, so right. Yeah, all of this stuff was like copied from when I like started f-reading and f-writing. So a lot of this is like templated boilerplate. Anyway, all of this looks fine. Okay, so it's probably something inside of the actual function, so that's where we have to look now. Okay. So size 16, count 1. Size 16, count 1. Oh. Okay. No, actually, we do malloc this. Yeah, I was thinking, my idea immediately was that we aren't mallocing and we're writing to something that isn't correct, because it's actually, if you check here, it's this memcopy that is giving us an issue. So I guess my idea was that we are reading into some uninitialized something. Maybe that isn't the case. I mean, what could be happening, right, is that our capacity is less than our count. So we are reading in a count and we're reading in the capacity for some of these things. If our capacity is less than our count, then we're obviously going to, write past. I don't know if that's the case. I might actually just like try to compile without all of this stuff that checks here. Also, I'm making sure here that all of our you know what I'm actually just gonna do is I'm just going to actually write printfs just to step through to see what exactly is giving us a segfault. So let me check. Let's say holes. And let's get a printf at the top for the cell. Well, we don't actually have the cell index here, but whatever. So this is going to be the holes, and then we want to check the vertical holes. Because right now it could be really anything, I guess. It could also be that I'm... probably not. It might be... It might be this. I might have to read all that in individually. What is a hole link? May not have thought about that. That's just two size T's. Hello, YouTube likes to recommend small live streams. Yep. I'm glad it got recommended to you though. I think I hit the algorithm today a little bit because a lot of people joined, and that was really fun to talk to people. When I started streaming, it used to be like before I had a good microphone and the stream was like super scuffed. It used to I used to get a lot, but I haven't streamed in a while. Who am I? That's a deep question. I'm a programmer, I guess. I like programming music and art. Working on a 2D render in OpenGL and C myself. So I had to click the instant I saw this. That's awesome. Yeah, if you have any questions about it, I don't know what your renderer looks like or your pipeline, but I'll be happy to answer any of that. Yeah, we should You know what we should do? We should print up that outline count. Right. Just to make sure that this is fine. Okay. So this is going to be the outline count, and then I want to have the whole link capacity and count. Because my suspicion is that one of these are off somewhere. So cool, dude. That's what it is. Thanks. These are size T's. You program in Rust? Yeah, that's sick. I used to do Rust myself. A bit of it. So I also want to do the vertical hole count and capacity to make sure that all of that it makes sense. And we will print all of this out. Sorry, I'm kind of focusing right now. Have I seen Sylvan Franklin? Of course. Vimothy Chalamet. We were talking about him in the Discord a while back. Cool guy. Cool guy. Is it forward renderer or deferred rendering? It's definitely not deferred. I guess it's forward rendering. The shading is something that I have to really work on myself. It isn't completely set in stone yet, but definitely going for more forward. I think in kind of like a retro engine like mine is like made to run at lower resolutions and stuff. It isn't benefiting from PBR stuff, so deferred rendering wouldn't, see any benefits, I saw your channel and you're the same dude that made that 5 mistakes video. Yep, yeah, I am. Hey, what's up, Luke? Yep, still alive. OpenGL 3.3, 4.6. It's always one of the two. It's actually 4.3. I don't use bindless textures or any of that stuff in 4.6. Okay, so let's see what the debug says. But I do use SSBOs. Okay, so we see immediately what the issue is. We have a whole link count, a whole link capacity that's obviously incorrect. 6.7. I don't really know about that meme. I heard about it somewhere. How am I keeping? I'm doing well. Just been busy and tired to stream lately, so all of these kind of seem correct, right? All of these seem sane, I guess. Like, all of these seem fine. I mean, vertical hole count of 143 seems a bit big. No? Like, that seems... like, this seems big, too. Yeah, that's obviously huge. Yeah, so somewhere our stride is wrong. I want to cry seeing that. Yeah, me too. My engine reminds you a lot of Quake. Love that game. Yeah, I love Quake. I still play like Quake maps on my free time. Um, yeah, I love Quake. Quake is awesome. Um, okay, so somewhere we're off. So we have to go through this one by one and figure out where we're off, I guess. All of this should be correct because that's what we had in the beginning. Maybe I get rid of this if cell hole capacity. Am I still on Linux Mint? Yeah. Bro's allergic to, yeah, I prefer, the just the control C's, just, all of this sort of thing. It's much faster. Bro, how did you get started with a game engine? Like I always had this thing, like I don't want to look for stuff, building the same stuff. Can't build without having an idea of it. I kind of just like got up one day and I had this idea for this game, and didn't like Unity. I remembered what I was doing when I was a kid with it, and I just kind of decided to make the engine. Just use that Unreal Engine, no need to thank you. It's actually this we were working on this bug one day, and this guy came into the chat and he was just like, just use Unity, lol. And I just like, I started downloading Unity. Kind of convenient personally. I'll cut lines of code, put in empty multi-line comments. Yeah, I mean, definitely, different ways of doing it for sure. I'm kind of interested in like, why is this not that, first of all? Oh, because these are arrays, right? Size of float 4, yeah. Right. This does need to be a pointer. The very first one seems off, but the whole count and whole capacity is probably true that these are 0. So if the whole capacity is 0, then it doesn't get into this anyway in the first one. It just reads the count and the capacity. And if that's wrong, then... Alright, thanks Luke. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for stopping by, and good luck with all that stuff I'm sure you're working on. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that all of this is correct. You know what I should actually do here? Is what I should do is I should compare it the to the stuff that we're doing when we load in. When we write to the file, and we should compare. What I want to do is I want to compare what we get when we're writing to the file versus reading, and then that should tell us where we're off immediately. Yeah, I mean, I think the compiler would tell me if I was missing a semicolon. I think the issue is probably just something that I'm not doing correct in my copying over here. Something I'm off probably a few bytes. Something is off. Okay. Oh, I hate it when GDB does this. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think we're fine now, hopefully. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, a thread hangs sometimes, and then it freaks out. You should definitely have a logic language inside your game, like Quake C. I'm not sure about Quake C. I'm not sure what that's all about. I guess I have logic, you know, somewhere. Okay, so when we wrote, let's see what all of this ended up. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so all of this looks much more correct than what we get out. Obviously. These are all pretty low numbers, right? These are pretty high, actually, but maybe it makes sense for some cells to have a bunch because of characters. Any book recommendations? I didn't read any books for any of this, but you know, I've heard I think Travis Vroman has some good book recommendations for sure. How old am I? I am 24. Hauling count vertical. So what I'm immediately okay, no, it makes sense. If there's a whole count of 1, whole outline count of 4. Okay, so obviously when I load and we get this seg fault, we're gonna immediately see this doesn't line up. Yeah. So somewhere I'm writing something wrong then. Can I b-hop to show? Yeah, sure. I can b-hop for sure. I haven't really sat down at the computer. There's definitely a lot of b-hopping in the game engine. Why build an engine from scratch? I have an idea why, but I would like to hear your reason. Just don't enjoy using other game engines. Um, there's also like W only and backwards and A only. There's also a wall writing tech and wall kick tech that you just kind of saw. Like you can do this. Yeah, I'm kind of rusty. And of course also go backwards. It's kind of hard to do, but yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I've played around with the movement code a lot. But yeah, it is very similar to Source Engine, but kind of like how I always wanted oping to be, you know? Where do I live? Southern, eastern coast, United States. There should be a hop sound effect. There is. I don't know if it's. Oh yeah, the hop, the vocal. Yeah, definitely. Wasn't bopping a quirk due to floating point error accumulation? Maybe that's a way of thinking of it. Really, it's just a velocity vector thing. How can I explain it? It's kind of like the length of vectors when you strafe just become larger and larger. Right, but I wouldn't say it's floating point error accumulation. It definitely was something intentional about the movement code in Quake, but they obviously changed it in subsequent games. Do I recommend starting right away with 3D dev or start with 2D? I started with 2D, I guess, just to get the idea of stuff. But I'd say it's definitely... Oh, maybe not. No. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was thinking about something there. Yeah, 3D versus 2D. I mean, it's hard to give my advice about it, anything specifically. You could definitely start with either. I think starting with 2D gives you kind of an idea, probably about like what a frame buffer is, very simply, and it's very simple to start with. And of course, all the learn OpenGL stuff is going to start you with like a triangle. So if you're just following the learn OpenGL tutorials, then definitely go for 2D because that's what it starts you with. So, you know. I kind of want to check if all of this stuff is the right type at this point. You know what's interesting actually that's happening? So we have to check. So our first hole count and hole capacity that we find for our very first cell is 0. And so if that is 0, then we don't get into this, and then we skip straight to here. And so yeah, I think we're probably skipping over this code. When we shouldn't. I have to... Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Is we will print out on save. I want to print out... I want to only print out hole count and hole capacity. I need to get the hole count and capacity for the very first hole, since that's the one we're testing against. I need to check that hole count and hole capacity just to make sure that it's 0. I don't think that it is 0, and I think that we're reading 0. On the other side, and I think that that's where the problem is. Engine looks almost feature complete. I mean, yeah, it pretty much is. I definitely have to have a go again at the lighting system. It definitely isn't finished with the light map stuff. Oh, hold on. So go to save. We saved, and now I have to go to the first hole. Hopefully it lets me... Or to the first cell, excuse me. What I'm immediately realizing, though, is that we are iterating this quite a bit. I wonder if this function gets called multiple times, because we only have 50 map cells. So this is kind of annoying what my debug is looking like, I know, but if this has any plans to have armor/shield system, I think what should be, instead of having a fixed armor cap, there should be armored points in a shield. I don't know if it's actually going to be an FPS game after all. I think it's actually going to end up being an RPG, which is kind of different. It started, I guess, as an FPS just because I was fascinated with FPSs and all that, but I think it's actually going to end up being a turn-based RPG. In 3D with 3D movement. Kind of similar to Wizardry. Is there something really dumb that I'm doing here? Maybe I'm just missing the printout just because I have all this stuff. But I think... There's no way that I'm not calling this multiple times. It's only supposed to print out 50 times. Real-time colored lighting or baked? It's a mixture of both. There's a lot more code for the baked lighting though. A lot more. It's kind of like was the cool part about the engine when it started was the UV light map that's all baked. Definitely needs to be redone though. It also has volumetric fog that's baked. Though it's kind of hard to see, I guess. There is like fog everywhere, like these fog shafts that are coming down. Yeah, we only write it once. Writing map cells, we only write it once. Maybe it is that much. We only have... maybe it is that many. How many cells do I have? It's a good question. I don't really know. Maybe it is a large number. I guess it is like... I guess it is a large number. It's, I guess it used to be like... Maybe it is 25 by 25. I thought that it was just 25 in total, but maybe it is 25 by 25. Well, then what I have to do is I have to print out this information, unfortunately outside of the function. What I have to do is I have to I just literally need to do only printf for the first one. So what that's gonna look like is we are going to go to just for I equals 0, we're just going to do this. Right? I want to check if this number is correct. The game is too slow. Consider optimizing it with raw binary. That would be pretty hardcore. You might find it interesting, my kind of series on my PS1 game that I worked on. All of that was done in integer space. It's kind of painful. You know what's interesting? That when we're reading, we're definitely reading a lot less than we're writing in terms of printouts. Kind of wondering if our map width and height are actually wrong here. Then that would be surprising, but I guess it's entirely possible. Okay. Okay, so this should mirror it now. Honestly, I am getting kind of tired, so I will probably head off soon. I know I didn't really, finish a lot of stuff on today's stream, but it was fun. I can make this in 60 seconds with AI. Yeah, there are definitely dudes with that type of mentality about things. I try to not pay too much attention to them. Oh, interesting. Interesting. That is actually a correct... That is correct. Wow. Hold on. For some reason, we do have this insanely large vertical hole count. Actually, that does make sense. Oh. Oh, well, that's just me being dumb. That I put this before we actually read in. It's just me being dumb. But yeah, that is actually correct. Interesting. So the first cell is actually fine. It's somewhere else. It's somewhere else. Okay, I want to see what it is when I read. The AI writes the most spaghetti. Yeah, I've definitely seen my fill of AI slop. There was this one time where I did ask AI to write this recursive routine, and what it did was it wrote a function that assigned to a variable recursively that the function, upon exiting out of recursion, frees that variable. And it was segfaulting, and no wonder it was because it was recursively freeing itself. Which is like, really bad, obviously. Man, how am I? I'm doing good. I hope you're doing well as well. It's good to see you again. Whole link count. It's whole link count that gets off. So it's something in between. Because the whole count of 1 and capacity of 4 and the outline count of 4 just makes sense. That just makes sense to me. That's correct. Case of use after free? Probably not. This doesn't free the whole. I just don't understand how what we're reading in here is fine, but what we read in here isn't fine, because all of this is if whole outline count. We're definitely getting into that, right? Because our whole outline count, it says is 4. I guess the more correct way of reading and writing this is that you would do fread at whole outline. Instead of this, you would do this to the whole outline count. This is like the more correct way of reading and writing this stuff, is to do this, I think, where you're just doing to a count, to the count of the array. It's kind of why this is this way. But that shouldn't that shouldn't be causing that. Do I have a job? Not currently. I've only worked in food service my entire life. So yeah, I mean, I've been looking for a new job, but I did quit my last job because honestly, I was just going through something at the time and couldn't really handle it. But I definitely want my whatever job I have next to not be working in food service. So it's just very, very stressful manifesting Elevans in a job at Valve. Thanks. I mean, I hope that works. I definitely enjoy that. But yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at stuff for sure, but it's hard for me to really commit to anything because I have a problem with accepting jobs that just like aren't good for my mental, So this is just a hobby, coding? Yeah. I mean, it's always been kind of a hobby, I guess, but go email Gabe. Yeah. I'm not really sure, but yeah. Is this code hosted somewhere? No, I have my own version control. I haven't made it like open source or open to the public, just I guess out of insecurity for my own code, I guess, but yeah. I must wonder. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to get rid of the whole link code, and then figure out if we still have segfault without it. Hey Zwixo, what's up? You into game engine dev exclusively, or do I mess with low level like kernels? I haven't really messed around with kernel development or anything. I'm sure that it's like really awesome, and it's something that I definitely would love to work on somewhere. I think that that's probably cool. I've just never really gotten into it, you know. Okay, so we saved and we're going to reload. And let's see. We still have a seg fault, but it's not on any of these. All of these are actually correct. Huh. Okay. Well, in that case, I guess it's just the whole link thing that's wrong. We still do have a seg fault though, but it's later on. It's a realloc thing. We're reallocating to 0 somewhere on build hole adjacency. Which we can also look at in a second. I'm more concerned about this early return load could not find asset thing. Which means that basically our asset name is probably wrong. And the asset name being wrong for everything means that I'm probably off somewhere. I want to print out the paths. And we're going to do this for save and load. Yo, about making your code public, there's no bad code, just different levels of experience. If you ever feel insecure, remember that there are plenty of people still stuck. Yeah, I guess that. I mean, maybe it's not insecurity. I guess I just don't want to be a bad example, you know? I think that there's probably a lot of better ways of doing things than the way that I do things. So, for me, you know, trying to, you know, have people like see my code, you know, there's probably like a lot better resources out there. Like for example, all the resources that I use to make all this stuff, you know. That's at least the way I think about it. Yeah, I am getting kind of tired, so I'm probably gonna head out soon. I kind of feel bad that I haven't figured out these errors, but as I said when I started this refactor, kind of reworking of this, I knew that it wasn't just gonna be an easy save and load thing. I knew that there was gonna be. Yeah, so all of this looks correct. GLTF UU. All of it is the same. GLTF UU. Len 11. Len 11 path. But when I save it, it looks fine. Let me count 11. 1, 2. Huh. I wonder if... Oh, that's what it is. Don't I have to do... Oh, yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Yeah, I was doing a pointer to a pointer thing. That's what the issue is. Speaking of resources, are you using an established asset format or writing my own? I use GLTF pretty much exclusively, at least for now, because of the way the animation stuff works. I had support for .object, but for simplicity's sake, I just standardized everything to GLTF for now. I used to kind of have my own format for everything, but now it's because of the animation stuff, I just kind of had to. Oh, this is still giving me the same thing. If I'm correct, asset name is 128. I wonder what this underscore UU is. It should only be writing 11 in. Is the code on the left side the same file as the right? No, this is my F writes and these are my F reads. This is where we're loading and versus where we're writing. It might be something where I need to... Oh, that might be what it is. I may need to actually put an escape character at the end of this. It may just not do it itself. That makes sense. Let me try that. Yeah, it should just be that. Yeah, that's probably what it is. That's why we're getting it at the end. Writing works, but reading doesn't? Yeah. Basically, if you're off somewhere by a few bytes, like if you're writing something but not reading it in exactly the same order as you write it, Obviously, with like complicated structs like our entity struct, it's quite complicated, you know, to get it all correct the first time. So there's some debugging, you know, involved in it. Okay, so let's see. When we write, we get our asset names, and then when we read, let's see. We get them correctly. No. No, they're all exactly the same. They are all exactly the same. So we are getting into this. It's just... Null termination was not the whole problem, no. If our current entity index equals our current entity count. Well, yeah, what's confusing is that we have exactly the same length and path. Oh, you know what's also annoying is that we don't reset these instance UIDs. That's also something that has to change, but yeah, I wonder if that's something that we write. Yeah, that's something that we have to write here. I guess it's asset ID. Yo, what's up, Isabel? How are ya? It's not morning for me, silly. It's like 3. It's 3 or something like that. I don't really know. I was about to head off. I'm kind of exhausted, but yeah, I'm working on game save and load right now. We are having some issues, I guess, with some binary strides somewhere. Something isn't getting written correctly. Yeah, it's interesting because this this length and the path name are correct on write when we're iterating, but they are all the same when we load in. And I guess like my first idea was that we're not allowed to write into this multiple times, but the issue is actually that writing a binary save of my world data, yeah. It's like, it's basically, it sorts every entity into like, it Q sorts everything into by asset ID, and then it writes the asset information above all of the entity instances, and then it loads it in like that. Like, it loads it in, loads the asset, and then spawns in all of the instances of entities from looped underneath it. Yeah, but I usually end up messing something up, with things like this. You know? Yeah, I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm not very entertaining because I'm kind of tired. I was just like yapping a lot, but the coffee is kind of wearing off and I probably need to like take a nap. And probably come back to this in a bit, but yeah, it's confusing because we're basically loading in the same file multiple times. You see this instance UID getting incremented, which is the asset number. So we're loading in basically the same exact file multiple times. Current entity index has to be incrementing every time. I just need to make sure that I'm not early exiting here at any point. It doesn't look like I am. But we should always be incrementing current entity index. I guess we can check what this current entity count is. But this should be all correct. But I probably made some issue somewhere. What's up, Jack Toss? How do I manage working on such a big project and not become discouraged to continue? Well, I do get discouraged to continue all the time. So, but I guess I manage because, not much else to do, I guess, other than keep working. What else am I gonna do? Not, keep going, kind of nothing better to do than to keep going, I don't really think of it as like something that of like, I've got this like really good reason, but it's just the alternative just seems worse than continuing, Yeah, see, so these lengths are correctly changing when we write to the file, right? And we are writing asset name length. So I don't understand. Ever opened up the code base after a week and forgot what I was doing? Yeah, definitely. Definitely all the time. Current entity count 1. keep leaving my projects unfinished. I have a full folder of things. Yeah. I'm kind of similar with a lot of projects, but this one's, I guess, different. Yeah, it's almost like the the cursor in terms of like binary file parsing isn't getting incremented. That's what it kind of feels like. Wishing me luck on this, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, it feels like it's reading in the same data over and over again instead of just like incrementing, you know, like how fread does is it increments the check with ftl. Yeah, that's probably what I should do. Kind of forgot how that works, but yeah. Current entity index should always start at 0 and then increment to 1, and then the second time it goes through this, then it should do this. But it should be f-reading all of this stuff in. What is this index actually? F-read index. I don't actually f-write that, do I? At least from my quick look at this, I don't think that I do. Oh, maybe. Okay, so let's try not doing that. I'm just going by I. Because I guess I wasn't writing this index in, which is the original index of the entity before we queue sort, but I don't keep that data anywhere, so I guess I don't write it. Yeah, I should just print out the ftl as well. Let's do that. Oh my gosh. Let me see what this says first, though. What made me choose snake case? I have snake case for a lot of stuff. I mean, it's just more readable to me. Oh, now it works. Oh, okay, so now it works fine. Okay, so that was the issue, that index, I guess, thing. We still have this realloc issue inside of build hole adjacency. which is a whole other bag of beans, I think. Build hole adjacency. This is what creates our nav meshes. Let's see where the realloc happens here. Size of hole link to HA neighbor's capacity. If the neighbor's count is greater than or equal to neighbor's capacity. Oh, so the reason why this is failing is because we disabled the hole link writing, because that was giving us a problem. So that's the reason why that's failing, is because we aren't allocating any hole links, because that was giving us a error that we have to fix before I can re-enable it. But I wanted to make sure that everything else is working before we go through with that. Okay, save and load. And let's see, without the whole adjacency stuff, we should still be fine to not run into errors otherwise. Okay. Okay, we're not getting anything. Okay. Now we built all of our draw buffers, is what all of this is. This is taking longer than I think it's supposed to. Okay, so that's why it's taking a long time. It's generating a light map, because that's what this does, this load map function. To be 100% sure that everything is working, I wanted to regenerate a light map while we're loading in, so that's why that's taking forever. I'm unsure if that's going to take actually forever, because of all the stuff inside of it that it needs to generate a light map for. It might be generating a light map for all the stuff that doesn't even use the light map. For example, all the weapon models and everything. So how do I build maps? In Blender. I used to have like a map editor, but then I had to kind of standardize everything to Blender's convention so that I could have animation and stuff. Yeah, this is probably going to take forever. I should probably just like stop. Obviously, this ray intersects triangle is a light map thing. So let me. Instead of this, let's try to load our static light map. Like we do here, load light map binary. The annoying thing is that I think we have to do this. I think that we have to do this before we map load binary. And I don't know, I've never tried to do this on a static map before. Also, why am I using Helix? Oh yeah, I'm using Helix. I like Helix. I like Vim too. I just don't like. I don't like, having to tweak things. To be honest, I'm kind of just a guy. I like things that just work. I kind of admire just things that just work. But yeah, I probably would like NeoVim, Okay. Oh my god. Okay, so okay, so so what matters? Okay, so this is obviously broken, right? But what matters is that, as far as we can tell, even though this is, whatever is happening here is very wrong, the most important thing here is that everything in the background is actually correct, right? All the models, okay, we just did segfault. All of the models are correct. Or in the correct space. You saw the trees were all in the same spaces. The map was all correct. The, test enemy models were all in the correct place, which is ultimately what we care about. I don't really, whatever that bug is, I'm going to have to look at build draw buffers, I guess. Like, append cold try to draw buffer. This might, we don't have anything that frees or draw buffers, so that's probably what it is. Something like that, I guess. But the main thing that I care about is the fact that everything was in the correct place. That's what I care about. So we can just like do this really quickly, but I'm like down to just like call it here for today. I know that when I try lazy vim config, I don't know. I like Helix a lot. I like the multiple cursor things. I like the fact that you can do a lot of very interesting things and weird things that you can't do in Vim. For example, if you want to do certain things like this, where you go here and then you do this, you can do all of this justifying thing. You can't do this in Vim. You can do a lot of really cool things in Helix that make it kind of unique to work with. That I enjoy the ambitiousness of it. I enjoy everything that it tries to do. I think that it's just really neat. Yeah. And a lot of the conventions of it, I think I just like the keystrokes more. Like this WA to save and moving between buffers. It's just something. It's just the conventions just feel a lot better to my fingers than any of the Vim setups that I've tried. And I think it looks pretty cool. Anyway, I am going to leave it here. there's obviously this bug. I will leave a note about it. But the main thing is that when we load in our map, everything is in the correct space. We just have the whatever is broken on top. Our screen is broken on top of our screen. I think that there's probably a draw buffer that's getting appended to itself, and so we're drawing something maybe twice or something like that. I'm not really sure. We're gonna have to figure that out. Anyway, I'm gonna write a note here that we need to fix bug with the screen space blue thing. May be a buffer issue. We never clear draw buffers per render group. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, I'm kind of happy with that, how every instance of every asset was in the correct space. The reason why they weren't moving was because our whole adjacency, we should also write a note about this too. Re-enable and fix whole adjacency. You know what it probably is? That's what I should write here. The problem is probably a issue with the what I'm writing here is that what it probably is that this whole adjacency struct that contains the all of the nav mesh information, it probably in some edge case this struct just isn't zero initialized, and it isn't something that we probably ran into an issue with otherwise because it just isn't in use in empty cells. But probably in empty cells it just never gets set to zero, and so that's why we are writing a billion things. So a billion numbers. It's probably just that we don't zero initialize the struct in some edge case. All right, that's gonna be it for me today. Thanks everybody for stopping by. Not sure when I'm gonna be live again. Just been very tired lately, like sleeping 10 to 12 hours. So hopefully I'll be less tired so that I can go live more. But if you aren't in the Discord, you can join the Discord. There's been some talk in there recently. I haven't really been able to keep up with it. But yeah, you can send in there any of the engine stuff that you're working on or whatever, and get feedback and all that. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. I kind of want to make a new video, but don't really know what to do it on. There's a lot of stuff that I've done since my last video. So a lot of stuff. Anyway, hope you are doing well and stay well and all that. And I will see you next time. All right. Hopefully we figure out this bug, and all that. All right. Peace out, guys. Have a nice one. Sorry, really short stream. I usually, I used to do these like 10, 12-hour streams, but yeah, lately I've just been tired. So, yeah. All right. Thanks.